Good evening. Welcome to the River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for January 15th, 2018. Rhonda, can we have a roll call?
Swanson. Here. Richter. Here. Odine.
Here.
Mashevsky.
Here.
Toom.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Looking for approval of the minutes from the December 18th meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Minutes are approved. We're going to switch up the agenda a little bit. We're going to move right to public comments, but only if they do not relate to the relicensing of the dams. We will get to that at a different portion when we get to that after that presentation. Does anybody have any public comments that do not relate to the relicensing of the dams? Okay. Move on to the consent agenda, which is the acknowledgement of the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission minutes from November 14th and the Powerful Choices Committee meeting minutes from December 14th.
I move approval of the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same. Minutes are approved. Item number 2, which would be the presentation from Mark regarding the relicensing of the hydroelectric facilities.
Mark Lobermeyer from SCH is here, our consultant. Mark, thanks for coming tonight for a brief overview of where we're at with relicensing decision for the hydros.
Yeah, great, thank you. And again, appreciate you having me this evening. We had a good discussion back in early December, and for the last 18 months, as you know, we've been working with city staff, the Kinnickinnick Corridor Committee, stakeholder groups, to help develop recommendations for the future of the Kinnickinnick River Corridor, as well as the future of the hydroelectric facilities. I'm going to just give a real brief overview of the report that's in your packet, and then we're going to get to the public part of the meeting. I do want to point out very quickly that there is one typographical error that we have seen in the report. It's on page 2. There's 2 text boxes on page 2, and in the one on the left, the depreciation date, so it's the last thing in the bottom of that box on the left, should be 2030, not 2020. So if you'd make that note, we have made that note, and the copy that is posted does have that correction in it.
Thank you.
So real quick background, the city was granted a license, 30-year license back in 1988 to operate the 2 hydro facilities. The upstream are the Junction Falls Hydro Facility and the downstream Powell Falls Hydro Facility. In early 2016, FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, granted a 5-year extension to the city to allow for the initiation of the corridor planning process, to allow the whole decision to be wrapped into the corridor planning. But in order to meet FERC's deadline, either for a new license or surrender of that license by August of 2023, we need to be making decisions very soon to start that process. It's a 5.5-year process to go through the applications and then the review that occurs. And so over the last 18 months, as I mentioned, we've been going through a lot of public engagement, a number of tech talks, we're getting a lot of public input, and we've heard a lot of people who are both in support of removal of the dams, and we've also heard from people who are supporting leaving things as they are. 3 scenarios were recommended by the committee to City Council, and on October 10th of 2017, the Council approved 3 scenarios for final consideration. Those include, number 1, relicensing the current hydro facilities and maintaining both the Junction Falls and Powell Falls hydro facilities and dams. The second scenario, surrender the license, which would remove both the Junction Falls and Powell Falls hydro facilities and dams at some point in the future. And the third option, or the third scenario, relicense the Junction Falls, the upstream hydro facility, and remove the Powell Falls hydro facility and dam at some point in the future. When we got together back on the 18th of December, I went through some of what we called the base project costs for each of the 3 scenarios. And I want to make it again a note tonight that those costs at this point aren't based on detailed design. There isn't a detailed plan that's been put in place for the improvements that we've been talking about, nor have there been any specific financial plans put in place on how to go about paying for that. And so those are things that will come ultimately through the deliberations over the next several weeks with the committee and the city council, and then continuing into the corridor planning process. So in terms of recommended actions this evening, we're asking that you consider one of the three scenarios as part of the report. Again, scenario one is relicensing and maintaining both Junction Falls and the Powell Falls facility. And under this scenario, you'd be seeking a new 40-year license. That would allow you to continue to produce electricity. You're not required to, but it allows you to continue to generate electricity. The 2017 dollar estimate for that is just a little bit over $750,000 if you were to pursue that right now. And under that consideration, we would be looking at minimal investment going forward in Powell Falls if that's the scenario that you're looking at. Scenario two deals again with surrender of the license, removing both Junction Falls and Powell Falls hydro facilities and dams. Under this scenario, you would surrender the license, and that would eliminate any future power generation by the city effective August 31st, 2023, coincident with the expiration of your existing license. To go forward then with dam removal and restoration of the stream would be, again, in 2017 dollars, the estimate is about $8 million for that scenario. Third scenario, which involves relicensing and maintaining Junction Falls facility. Under this scenario, you would seek a 40-year license to continue to generate electricity at Junction Falls. Once again, it allows you to generate electricity, but you're not required to. Under this scenario, it would also call then for the timely removal of the Powell Falls facility, including the establishment of the new stream restoration, stream bank habitat, and so on. And the estimate for the third scenario is about $1.9 million. So there's a resolution in your packet tonight for your consideration, and that's what I have for you for the report.
Okay. Thank you. I will now open it up for the public hearing, and I have a sign-up sheet where everybody signed in to kind of keep things moving a little bit. I believe you were told about 2 or 3 minutes for your comments. What we'd like to do is if somebody before you has said something very similar to what you've said and you would like not to speak at this point, I will call your name as we go through the list. But if you would not like to speak, just tell me pass and we'll move on to the next person. And when you come up, if you could please state your name and where you're from, that would be very helpful as well. First speaker that we have would be Neil Gilbertson, and I apologize if I can't read your name correctly on the list. I'll try and get as close as I can.
Neil Gilbertson, River Falls, Wisconsin.
Neil, just hold on one second. Just for clarity, you said about 2 or 3 minutes. Do you want something official on that, Adam, or do you just kind of just estimating and hoping people
let's
go on
do-
the honor system?
Yep, let's go.
I'll make it short, just
go-
try to cover all the bases.
Let's go. We'll go 2 minutes.
Okay.
About 24 speakers.
When I just heard about the removing the dam down here, it surprised me. It says, why? Well, I never got why. And he says, well, don't worry about it. The taxes will pay for it. How much is that? And it's about in the millions of dollars. And I thought, wow, the millions of dollars. And they said, well, the government will pay for it. Well, we're the government. You're talking millions of dollars. I'm old school, money. And then you've got the free electricity. That got my attention. So what I'm thinking, if you're removing the dam, there's no reason for moving it. And if you do remove it, you got all the sludge in the bottom of it. You're going to have a big trouble there, reaching your billfold again. And your taxes go up. And then once you do remove it, you got to replace all the manholes and stuff draining in there. And that's going to be a expense. What it is, when I'm boiling it down, it's going to cost a lot of money for our young generation. If you got young kids about this tall, you're going to put them in a burden because they got to pay for it because you're going to be gone. It's the little kids that's going to be getting the blunt of it. People don't realize that. And others realize I'm safety. I'm a kind of a safety man. Back in 20 years back, they took a big test on these fire hydrants in River Falls. If Main Street burns up, Main Street burns up, the fire hydrants won't give enough water out. The fire chief of firemen went down and made a test on these fire hydrants. So they dug a hole in the ground. They got a pipe, a 8-inch pipe going in the creek to suck it up in the hill so the pumpers can take water and put the Main Street out. That's safety. I don't think nobody thought of that. If you take the dams down, you don't have that safety. Oh, don't have that safety. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just give you a 10-second heads up. You're almost out. Next we have, I believe it's Eddie Rivard.
Yeah, Eddie Rivard, New Brighton, Minnesota. I just want to say I support removing both dams. I come out here a lot to fish and spend a lot of money in this town. And I just support removing both dams because I think it'll bring a lot of people like me to this town to spend money. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up would be Larry Larson.
Hi, I'm Larry Larson from River Falls, and I lived in this town for 55 years, same location, having there. And my grandmother told me money don't grow on trees. And taking the dams out there, if the dams weren't here, the town wouldn't be here. The town was based on the dams. And I would say, instead of spending money, the people in Minnesota are coming over here saying they want to take the dams off. Are they going to come over here and pay the taxes? We don't need to raise taxes. We should spend money wisely. And I think there's a problem. Like Neil says, I agree with Neil, and I agree with a lot of other people. I don't like driving down the country road seeing signs that says free the dams. They don't live in River Falls. They don't pay taxes in this town. They shouldn't have no say. And I think all the kayakers should stay on the other side of the river and do their own thing. They don't come here and tell us what to do and raise my taxes on my house. I'm retired, so I just want to say I lived here and I know all the stuff that's in that lake, you know, what's going on. I think leave it alone. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You people want to spend money you haven't got. Well, money don't grow on trees. So I just want to say thank you and I hope you make the right decision. Do the right thing. Save money. Don't spend money you haven't got. Don't grow on trees. They don't print it every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Next up, we have Michael Alwyn.
I got right to the point.
Mr. Chairman, members of the,
If you could state your name and where you're from.
yes, sir.
That would be great.
My name is Michael Alwyn. I'm a Minnesota resident. I'm a member of Trout Unlimited. I'm a member of the Audubon Society, and I'm a member of the Nature Conservancy. Those are all groups that are dedicated to conserving our natural resources. However, I'm not speaking tonight as a representative of any of those organizations, nor as a representative of the scientific community, because I'm not a scientist. I'm a private citizen, a layman, and a trout angler who's interested in the stewardship of our water resources. I've been fishing on the Kinney for over 40 years, and I consider it my home water. I want what's best for her. Our Trout Unlimited chapter, Kayaptuish, has been monitoring stream temperatures above and below river falls for over 20 years. Using the river above River Falls as a baseline, the data clearly indicates the effect of the impoundments on the lower river. The lower river runs approximately 2 degrees warmer in summer and 2 degrees colder in winter. Why is this important? We're indebted to Professor Gary Borgert, UW-Wausau, now retired, for providing the answer. Incredibly, most of the world's fresh water is frozen in the polar ice caps. Of the remaining fresh water, only 1/1000th of 1% flows in a river or stream. Still more fantastic, only 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the Earth's fresh water flows in a trout stream, making it one of the world's smallest and most endangered ecosystems. While the city of River Falls has made much progress in the area of stormwater management, there is more to do. The impoundments in this city are having an adverse effect on 8 miles of a critical ecosystem. The Lower Kinney needs to be protected. The right thing to do is to decommission and dismantle the dams, thereby promoting the rehabilitation of the Lower Kinnickinnick River. I'd like to thank the chair and the board for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Next up is William Hanson. Then on deck would be, I believe it's Peter Davis.
I think too, as William comes to the podium, I just want to remind folks in the audience to be respectful and probably hold your applause and cheers and jeers, just to be respectful of all speakers tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, council, fellow guests, I'm William Hanson from the River Falls Township. I'd just like to make a few brief points tonight. One is that the River Falls, see if we can get our focus here right. I think we've got our overhead. There we go. The River Falls dams and hydros are a debt-free, profitable source of 85% of our local renewable energy. The hydros operate 24/7. The Powell Falls Dam Hydro produces nearly twice the renewable energy that we get from our solar garden at Sterling Pond. The revenue from this profitable sale of hydroelectricity provides an annual payment to the city and also a profit to the utility budget. Hydro profits could be used for improvement to Lake George and Lake Louise. Please consider the recommendation of renewing the license for both dams and hydros to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Next up would be Mr. Davis.
Thank you, and you are correct. It's Peter Davis. My name is Peter Davis. I live in River Falls, and my family and I have been residents here since 2004. I support surrendering the licenses and the removal of both dams. As a spring-fed cold water river, the Kinney is a very special resource whose natural beauty, pristine quality, and public accessibility factored into my family's decision to move here to River Falls. The fact that this is a cold water resource means that we as a community need to take extra measures to preserve this river and to protect it. I do appreciate River Falls Utilities' use of renewable resources, but using the Kinney for such a small portion of our energy compared to the harm of the aging dams is not an acceptable use. Removing the dams will help keep the Kinney as a special place for the next generation of people who choose to live in River Falls and who take pride in having such a special resource in the place they call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if we could just hold our applause for the end, that would be great. Next up is Judy Foster Babcock. Then on deck would be Deb, I want to say Wolf.
Hi, I'm Judy Foster Babcock, and I spoke to this group a month ago at their meeting, and then following that, I posted a letter to the Corridor Planning Committee and sent a copy to this group. I'd just like to share a few of those remarks for the purpose of the public record. I am a lifelong resident of River Falls, and as you know from the Foster family name, we've been here since 1848, so we've been around a while. My family was responsible for some of the first hydro impoundments and harnessing the river to generate energy. So I understand the history of this set of hydro dams and the amount of time that people like Neil and my grandfather Earl worked in those facilities. But I also know that there comes a time for everything to change. And the point of my letter to this group and to the Corridor Planning Committee and the council was to say that I think based on what I've heard at the Tech Talks, the people that I've talked to in the community, there is an interest in removing these dams and restoring the river for a number of reasons, not only because of the quality of the downstream river improvement that's possible, but also because there's an opportunity to invest in our community, improve our stormwater management, and make a difference for future generations, as people have said. So I really encourage this body to consider the second option on your resolution, which is surrender and removal, and make a plan that you can present to the council that would help them understand how to finance that using renewable and green energy sources that the city has available or could develop. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Next on deck would be Mark Spafford.
Good evening. My name again is Deb Wolf. I do not live in River Falls, but both my husband and I work here, have worked here for 18 years. Our daughter goes to school here. We belong to a church in River Falls, and we spend a lot of time in the community. So I personally, and we both are involved in various civic groups in River Falls. I just wanted to encourage the board to recommend license surrender for both dams and their removal. There's been quite a bit of evidence about the lack of efficiency of this particular form of power. I think over the state of Wisconsin, many of these dams have been removed because they just aren't feasible anymore. I'd like to see the community invest in different forms of renewable energy that don't threaten the valuable resource we call the Kinney River. I also think that with the dams removed, the enhancements that could happen to the downtown area of River Falls would be a draw for young community members, new families, increase our workforce, and make the community a much more viable economically through the investment in recreation and tourism. Those are my comments, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Just a quick announcement before Mr. Spafford speaks. We're running out of room in the back. They are also simulcasting this in the training room. If you would like a seat, you can go right down the hall to the training room, or right across the hall. Sorry, go ahead.
Good evening, Mark Spafford from River Falls. And I do want to start out by saying I am not an expert, and I don't know that I've talked to any experts that live in this community other than the people that were the special speakers that came to the Tech Talks. On May 18th, I was able to get into the line to speak at the podium to ask a question, but the person prior to me asked 4 questions, and the time ran out at 8 o'clock. So I was able to talk to Leslie Brotkowski from the FERC. And the question that I was going to ask her was, what is the current efficiency of the lower and the upper hydros? And she was quick to answer that day, and stating that the lower is approximately 60%, and the upper is somewhere in the 45 to 50%. And so being in the engineering field that I am, my quick question was, what would it take and how high could we go if we did replace the hydros? And she says, very quickly, she said, easily to 95 or higher %. And at what cost? She said, it's not that costly. It's $250,000 to $300,000 probably per hydro. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, and another thing that I learned that night was that hydro is approximately 6 times the efficiency of any other renewable resource, of wind or solar. So what I would suggest is to keep both the hydros. It is something that we have that other cities don't have, and to go ahead and spend that extra money to upgrade them. And the other thing that I wanted to say was I respect the people that fish, and about 3 years ago I stopped fishing the Kinney. And I'm fishing other streams because of the reason of the kayaks. If a kayak comes through, you have at least 15 to 20 minutes before you can start catching fish again. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Allison Bruflat, and then followed by Nate Dodge and Steve Dodge.
Hi, my name is Allison Bruflat, and I am a City of River Falls resident. I support the restoration of the Kinney River through dam removal. Please surrender the license for our hydroelectric facility and remove both dams. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate Dodge. Then Steve Dodge is next.
Hi, I'm Nate Dodge. I'm a resident of River Falls, and I support the surrendering of the license and the removal of both dams. As a college student in town, also, I would just like to say, when you go down there on the college tour on, orientation, and all the students, are told about how wonderful the river is and things like that. And then you see a concrete wall at Glen Park. It's not too impressive. I mean, it's a good concrete wall. It's well designed. But I think a restored river would be nicer. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Dodge? And then Emily Page and Allison Page.
Hi, I'm Steve Dodge, 209 Hamilton Drive. And I'm also a civil engineer registered in 2 states, Minnesota and Wisconsin. But I am for the surrendering of the license for both dams. And the main reason why is the river is pretty much the heartbeat of the city. It's our identity. These impoundments are not. And these impoundments are degraded waters. And it's proven by the studies that have been done. It's proven by the sediments that are in the impoundments. And the reason for taking it out, because once you take the dams out, that everything in perpetuity after that is no expense. But if you keep the dams in, what I want to know is what is the life cycle cost of these dams? Because we didn't talk about what it's going to cost to replace a whole dam. And in today's dollars, that's a lot of money. And when you get to that point, this is only a 40-year license, and the license you have right now is coming up. And you got to make major investments even at the half-life of these dams. And so I don't think everyone's really financially thinking about the future generations, like this one gentleman just brought up, that these dams are extremely expensive. And there will be no expense except for the initial expense of taking the dams out and restoring the river so that the cold waters can flow through the veins of the city. And that's all I have to say.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emily Page and then Allison Page.
Emily Page, I'm a City of River Falls resident. I just wanted to comment that I see the Kinney as the most prized asset in our community, and I support license surrender and removal of both dams. Thank you.
Thank you. Then after Mrs. Page would be Sarah Hall.
Hi, good evening. I'm Allison Page. I'm a lifelong citizen of River Falls. My spouse, David, and I are business owners in River Falls, and I'm also a member of the board of directors of the Kinnickinnick River Land Trust and the Friends of the Kinney. The mission, as some of you in the room know, of the Kinnickinnick River Land Trust is to work with the community to conserve and protect the beauty and the health of the Kinnickinnick River and its watershed. And we've spent the last 25 years making that happen in a good way. I just wanted to speak to our approach as a community to this issue. As we approach these major decisions for our community, it's important that we really take note of what we know and what we believe and act from those things that we know. So what do we know for sure? We know that the health of this river and the ecosystem that it supports will be improved if the river flows freely, if both dams are removed. We know that. The jury's in, the science is in, and we've heard from the scientists who are experts in this field that it's in the best interest of the health of this river to remove those dams as soon as possible. We also know that the community of River Falls supports the use of sustainable and renewable energy. River Falls has invested heavily in transitioning to more sustainable energy resources, and I want to thank this group in particular for making that happen. And we should continue that journey. We know that our current hydro facility contributes a very small portion of our electricity, and the financial implications of continuing on that path as an energy source versus other energy sources is really negligible. We should not make this decision based on how much money we make on this hydro or that. The money in this situation is negligible. We know, or we believe, or we suspect, I would say, that the optimization and development of our river corridor could benefit our local economy and bolster our downtown business. So our challenge is, as good stewards of the resources of our community, how can we optimize the health and the well-being of the Kinney, bolster our local economy, and continue our commitment to sustainable and renewable energy in a manner, of course, that is fiscally responsible. So it's a big, big job, and appreciate your attention to it.
Thank you. Sarah Hall. And then Dave Farringer is next, followed by Michael Page.
My name is Sarah Hall, and I'm a resident of the city of River Falls. I came to the city almost 30 years ago to pursue a graduate degree and stayed partially for my love of the river and our community. I'm concerned about the health of the river and the negative impact that the impoundments have had on our river, which are, of course, created by the dams. And for this reason, I would like to see the license surrendered and both of the dams removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Farringer.
Hi, my name is Dave Farringer.
Sorry.
And I've lived in the
Apologies.
city of River Falls since 1984. I am asking and supporting the surrender of the license and the removal of both dams. The 1% to 2% of the electricity now from the dams could be compensated by a much more emphasis on the $3 a month renewable energy that all of us citizens of River Falls could do, and that could be much compensated for. I'd like to see the falls brought back to River Falls. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Page. And then Gary Van and Tony Stifter.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address this board this evening. My name is Michael Page, and I am a lifelong resident of the city of River Falls and a River Falls Municipal Utility customer at both my home as well as my business just across Main Street from the upper impoundment of the Kinnickinnick River. I am here tonight as the president and spokesperson of the Friends of the Kinney organization. I presented here last month and delivered a petition from the Friends of the Kinney containing 1,987 signatures requesting surrender of the FERC license and removal of both of the dams from the Kinnickinnick River in a timely fashion. Adding this substantial public support for dam removal to the public support shown in the city's online survey and the December 8th, 2016 public open house that kicked off the Kinney Corridor planning process, which resulted in 608 respondents supporting dam removal to just 102 respondents in favor of keeping the dams. Please heed this overwhelming public support shown throughout this process for license surrender and dam removal in a timely fashion as you weigh your decision here this evening. It surely supports a decision to recommend license surrender. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Gary Van. I've lived for 60 years, about 200 yards from the Kinnickinnick, fished it numerous times. If you remove the dams, you're opening up a can of worms there won't be a return from. It's like a government program. Some are good, some are bad. You start a bad one, you can't close it.
Thank you. Tony Stifter, followed by Carrie Hansen and Bill Hansen.
I'm Tony Stifter. I'm a past resident of River Falls and a current resident of Minnesota. Every dam has a life. The day you make a commitment to take the dam out is the day that you put it in. It's just a matter of when you choose to do that. The longer you leave the dam in, the more sediment that accumulates behind it. And when we look at the numbers, the numbers to keep the dam or remove the dam, you guys are making a decision about the cost that's right in front of you. But the fact is the dams will come out either today or someday in the future. And the longer they stay in, the more that cost goes up. They'll never be less expensive to remove than they are right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Carrie Hansen?
Good evening. My name is Karen Hansen, and I am a Town of Troy resident, alumni of UWRF, and City of River Falls resident for 15 years prior. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. In choosing my statements tonight, I really took into consideration some of the concerns I was hearing on the street. And the two main questions were, what's the hurry to remove the dams, and where does the money come from? Inevitably, in every business decision, it always comes down to money. With that said, please consider the following with regard to fiduciary responsibility to residents of River Falls. When making your decision and recommendation to City Council, I know you don't have the authority to decide how we spend taxpayer money, but you as the Utility Board, Advisory Board, are the experts in this topics of this matter. And so please remember past council commitments that were made to the public. One of those was a long-term investment, in fact, a 50 to 75-year investment, when we reconstructed, improved, and updated our hydro facilities and the building of the Winter Street Bridge in the early 90s. 28 years later, we're considering dam removal and bridge modifications. Each of these has served our community well. They have no safety issues or financial concerns. In fact, the hydros are profitable. I'm asking that you uphold the commitments and financial investments that have been made by past city councils and make the recommendation to our current council members for dam relicensing, lake restoration, and continued hydroelectric production, a profitable local renewable energy source. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Hanson. And then Ben Plunkett would be on deck.
Hi, Bill Hanson, River Falls. We hear a lot about the negative impacts of the dams and lakes, and I have sort of an interesting quote I thought I'd read to you from a panel of experts. The quote reads, "The slightly warmer water before River Falls supports more minnow and crustacean life, which can support the larger trout than the upper reaches. In the lower, more fertile reaches, browns are bigger and less frequent, but still plentiful, with densities around 3,000 trout per mile." This is a quote I found on the Cap to Wish website when they're instructing trout fishermen where to fish, and they're saying below the impoundments is where you'll catch the bigger fish. I thought that was a little intriguing. The U.S. Geological Survey website says hydroelectricity is the most important and widely used renewable source of energy. The trend for the future will probably be to build more small-scale hydro plants that can generate electricity for a single community. We already own the hydros, and the Kinney is already rated Class 1 throughout, including the lake channels, per this year's DNR report. The lakes are not excluded as they do in O'Galley Reservoir or things like that. It's Class 1 throughout due to the deep channel that runs along the west side. Why would we ever spend $8+ million to remove our lakes and destroy our own town asset? That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ben Plunkett, followed by Rose Rudy. Rose Rudy.
Ben Plunkett, 709 Bartosh Lane, River Falls, Wisconsin. The Kinney's in my backyard, and I appreciate the investment made by past residents of this city in ensuring that we have great parks and a relatively clean river today. It is not as perfect as it could be because of past capital investments made by prior governments elected to this city. Those capital investments represent choices that were made at the time towards future decisions and the future availability of funds for the people in this city. As we evaluate the choices presented tonight, we have to recognize that none of them are free. All of them come with costs, and the alternatives to those choices represent what is available in the future. There has been an economic case made for restoration of the Kinney, but there has not been an exploration of alternative uses of that money to achieve the same goal that could quite potentially be done at a lower cost. As such, I feel that it would hamper the ability to make proper future choices by choosing to surrender the licenses at this time. There may come, and certainly will come, a time in the future when these facilities are unprofitable and a detriment to the city and need to be removed. Without an evaluation of cost versus benefits, I don't think that that case has been made tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose Rude. And then on deck would be Joel Donna.
Hello, my name is Rose Rude, and I'm a resident of River Falls. I'm a proponent of surrendering the dams. I'm a photographer, and I've spent many hours hiking along the rivers, and it just brings a peace to me, and I think it brings a peace to many people. And if we surrender the dams, it will have a more free-flowing river. One day this summer when we had a lot of rain, I went down and took pictures right below the swinging bridge, and I saw the water flowing through the dam, or flowing over the rivers like it would be if the dam was removed. And it just touched my soul, and I would like many other people to have that same experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joel Donna. I live on 109 South 6th Street. This is our third year here. My wife and I relocated from Minnesota to Wisconsin to take a job at River Falls here. I did my undergrad work at UW River Falls, and now I'm a science educator there. And I'm speaking tonight to encourage you to surrender and remove the dams. Since we live downtown, I'd like to be able to walk to recreate downtown and hopefully bring my future family someday downtown to have a closer access to the Kinney. Kinney's difficult to get to. I do a lot of fishing on the Kinney, and there are some tricky spots to get down into, and it's beautiful. And I agree that the kayaks can be a pain to fish around, but people are getting down there and they're engaging in the environment. And I think that's really important. By restoring this area would give the kids in this community a closer access to that natural environment and to have a greater sense of understanding of the ecology and the environment. And I think that'd be a powerful statement. And then finally, as a member of the faculty here, I'm also on search committees, and we've got a new search going on for a new math educator. If anybody's a good math educator, let me know. But I'd like to be able to bring them down to the Kinney and just kind of show them, like, this is what this town is looking forward to. And, maybe just kind of envision having a nice dinner at a restaurant and having those people come to stay here instead of relocating to other places and commuting into River Falls and being a stronger part of that community. And that would, of course, bring more taxpayer dollars and more members to the River Falls community. So thank you for your time, and again, I'd like to support the surrender and removal of both dams. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilman Gagne.
Hi, I'm Chris Gagne, River Falls City Council, also a resident of the city of River Falls. My family kayaks the Kinney. They hop in just north of town here by my great-grandma's old farm. She has since passed, bless her soul. One thing that I've ran on 2 terms now is the concept of removing the dams or relicensing. That's been a big topic. The number one thing that I say to folks when they ask me that question, are you in favor of removing or keeping? I say, I'm in favor of removing the dams in the city of River Falls. However, at the end of their useful life, we've made it a huge investment in our community. In a recent packet at the last meeting, there was some topics brought up about hydro generation. You think about how much power we produce. We produce about 270 homes of electricity just off of 2 hydros, 185 homes on the upper, 85 on the lower. You think about how much solar power that the upper produces. Again, this is from the packet of the last utility board meeting. It's about 3,000 solar panels. We have about over 700 out in our solar garden right now. So that's 3,000 just on one. You think about the second, the Powell Falls, that's about 1,300 solar panels. So we could stick in 4,300 solar panels out in a solar garden, and that would take up probably half of our corporate park out in Sterling Ponds. I don't think anybody wants to see that, let alone the folks that live right across the street that have expressed that to us.
10 seconds.
I'm in favor, thank you. I'm in favor of restoring the Kinney. I've ran on that twice. Restoring the Kinney at the end of the useful life of the dams. I have ran on that twice, and I've won 2-1. I think that is a high precedent. I'm not a single issue candidate. I never have been, but I think this is a big concern that we have in the city of River Falls, and I think we have about 40 years left on the upper and maybe 5 to 8 on the lower. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker that I have is Christopher Olson. Is there if there's anybody that came in late and wants to speak, please see Mary and sign in advance. Mary's standing in the corner.
My name is Christopher Olson. I live at 303 Roosevelt Street. My backyard butts up against Kinney. I've lived here twice in my life, once as a youth in Paige Olson's Kinney Creek Outfitters as a young kid. I got to see the destruction of the Kinney as a youth in the late 70s and early 80s. I moved back here in the late 2000 or early 2000s once I started having kids. I have 2 points to make tonight. One is we have an opportunity right now to distinct ourselves from Stillwater and Hudson. Stillwater has an identity. Hudson has an identity. Does River Falls have an identity yet? It does not. This is our opportunity to create an identity for this town. Remove the dams, open the river, create an opportunity for everybody that lives in this town, everybody that moves to this town, everybody that lives here values the river as a resource. Let's use that to create an identity for ourselves. I think that's the most valuable thing that we have right now. People talk about not having good restaurants, not having good shopping opportunities. Open up the rivers. Let's see what this town can produce. Let's create an identity for this place. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay. If you could state your name and where you're from, that would be great.
Stan Meyer, River Falls, for 75 years. I've been listening to all the statements, both sides, for the last 6 months now. And I'm just going to not keep going over what everybody else is going over. I'm just going to say there's very few towns in this country, Minnesota, Wisconsin, wherever, that has 2 inland lakes in it, which we do have, by the way, the dams. I think that should be brought into it. I think also, some professors said that the lake the temperature goes down and up. 50 years ago, I fished the Kinnickinnick across from the old creamery on that big old rock that's there. And there was no issue with the temperature of the water, because the hot from we use yellow maize, is what they called it. It's a crust from a butter. We use that for bait and catching trout. You've probably seen, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, we had no problem with that. Next door was the laundry. They threw live water in the water. The rainbow trout, I've always caught my limits down there. Okay, a couple other things I want to make on it here. We probably could go by the example of Hudson. Now, they tore down a dam down there, and Governor Walker's put the new dam up. They were not going to have a dam there. 5 minutes.
10 seconds.
I got enough for 30
10
minutes
seconds.
here.
You got 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up would be Lynn McMullen. And then finally, we have Lori Wilson.
Good evening. I jumped up here because I heard someone earlier today say that they thought they could attract more young people to the community. My partner's standing in the back. He and I moved here from the cities, from Minnesota, because we were looking for a place where we could run and see the stars, where we could watch birds, which I love doing, where we could hear a stream from our house. And we haven't bought that house yet, We're scrimping and saving and trying to get there and working for a place where we can raise our families. But we were drawn here because we hoped that there would be falls in River Falls. So we're asking that you surrender the license and remove the dams.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Wilson. I live at 809 State Street, and I've lived in the town of the city of River Falls for over 40 years, and I'll just say that. When I was little, we would go swimming in Lake George, and the couple times we did jump out of the tree and into the water, I had to wiggle so hard to get out of that sediment, and decided that that wasn't fun. I'm not going to do that again. When I bring friends from out of town to see the Kinney, I don't bring them downtown. I don't bring them to the area that our town is, our city surrounds. I bring them to the upper portion past the city, or the lower portion past the city. So, and that's sad. I wish I could. I also want to say these are not lakes; they're settling ponds. So people who call that these bodies of water as lakes, I think that's deceptive. And the last thing, I just want to compliment the utility board because I love the Powerful Choices program. I have been a participant of that program for many years. I buy, I think, 3 blocks of energy. I'd like to buy more. I'm fully invested in renewable resources, and I believe in them. I'm very happy to see the solar pond, or the solar field on Sterling Ponds. I think that's awesome. And when people are worried about money and how are we going to generate, filling fields with solar panels, Elon Musk, I don't know if you know who he is. He's the inventor, he's the Tesla guy. Well, he just invented a roof tile that collects solar power. And that's going to be readily available soon at a good price, because his plan is to change the way the world works. And you guys have a powerful choice today. And I hope you decide to take these antiquated dams out, invest the money in smarter solutions for renewable energy sources in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak tonight? Okay, we will close the public hearing and move on to item number 3, which is the resolution and memo adopting the recommendation for hydroelectric facilities relicensing or surrender.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that regardless of which scenario you choose, that the choice goes directly to the council rather than filtering it through another committee. It's a motion.
Can't hear.
Oh, can you turn your mic on?
I made a motion that the results of however the board chooses to go with whichever scenario, that information goes directly to the council rather than filtering it through another subcommittee of the council.
Do we have a second?
I second.
May I speak to that? Most of the council is here. As a member of the council, we created the Kinney Corridor Planning Committee. We gave them the authority to look at all the information and make a recommendation to the council. So I would oppose your motion because the city council knows what we're doing here. They're here. And it's the work of the Kinney Corridor Committee, which is a lot of really dedicated people who've been meeting for months and considering a lot of information, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to do the work we've asked them to do. So I would oppose this motion.
Absolutely, I agree with you. They've done a fine job. However, we are a body that is appointed by the council, and we answer to the council. We do not answer to a secondary committee.
Is there any more discussion? We'll vote on the motion.
For the motion?
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Say
Aye.
no.
Aye. Aye.
Motion does not pass. Moving on to we're still on the resolution and memo adopting the recommendation for hydroelectric facilities relicensing and surrender. Discussion on that.
I have a number of concerns listening to everyone speak tonight.
bringing this to the Utility Advisory Board. It seems like the resolution is supporting the license decision for hydroelectrics. The concerns I have are the differences between one group says the hydros are producing and there's revenue based on that production. Another side says they're costing us money. So there's a difference there. Now we have, is it true we have two consultants? One for that the city elected and the Friends of the Kinney. Do you have a consultant? Yes, okay. And then the dam removal itself and restoration. There seems to be a big difference in what that means and cost. One cost is $2 million. One cost is $8 million. I don't even know if the two are the same, they're doing the same thing. You know, does that $2 million, is that looking at the bridges, the abutments, the stormwater? What is that doing? So I guess I'm confused as to why to me, it seems like the corridor committee should have a recommendation for the utility board, not the other way around. The utility board, I mean, we're looking at what's 1 or 2% of our electricity is generated from the hydros, but yet we're trying to decide this kind of a question for the utilities. Isn't this more going back to the committee and their recommendations? If there's no dam, if the committee decides to remove the dams, we don't need the hydros, do we? I mean, the dams, the hydros are dependent on the dams. So I'm trying to understand this resolution in general, I guess, and why our committee, the corridor committee, doesn't have a recommendation prior to our meeting, so we understand if we even have to think about relicensing the hydros. If there's no dams, there's no, we don't even have to have a discussion.
I have a question. Public comments closed.
Yeah, I think it's as much, it's not the desire to remove the dams or not relicense the hydros. It's coming up a plan to pay for that and the development plan. And if there's money to be made, there's investors out there. People could come forward. But so far, we haven't heard anything about that. All we hear is whether, as you say, whether they're profitable or not profitable. Basically, some of the number, and I agree with the councilman that eventually we're going to have to take them out, and that was a comment by some of the other people, but it's a matter of when and how much money we invest in them, or how much revenue we get out of them. And now I think we got some conflicting information in some of the information we got tonight, in that last month it was indicated that we were going to have to spend upwards of $460,000 to on the Powell Dam. Now today I see some information that maybe we don't have to spend that. I'm not sure if we have to or not. Again, using some of the rough numbers that we've been given and try to make sense of them, I don't think that dam, at least based on the operating revenues of it in the past history, will be able to pay for that investment to repair the dam. So, I mean, that makes it a little bit easier to decide. Now, it doesn't pay for the licensing or permitting. Either way, it's a high cost for licensing and permitting, whether we remove the dam or we relicense it. It's unfortunate that to relicense is almost 5 years of the revenue. So, I mean, that's the way the rules that we're given to live by or work with for such a small operating facility. The actual relicensing is very high. Of course, to take the dams out, the cost for permitting is very high. And I don't think we haven't been given any information on where that money's going to come from.
And it's been stated multiple times that relicensing the dam doesn't require that we keep them or generate power. So I don't see any reason not to relicense them at this point until they prove that they have to be major repairs or that type of thing happens. Then it makes sense that maybe it's time to remove them. But right now, that isn't the case.
If I can make a few clarifying remarks about some of the numbers we've just heard. You asked, I think, about the difference between the $8 million amount and the what's like $1.9 million amount, and taking out either removing both the dams or keeping Junction Falls and removing the Powell Dam. The 1.9 million would be removing Powell Dam. It's below the bridge. We wouldn't have to worry about what the bridge, any modifications to the bridge. It's the one that's kind of below Glen Park, the small one. And then you talked about the expenses in upgrading the Powell Falls Dam, the lower one. That's the $270,000 that's included in relicensing both of them. So that's an expense that would be that we'd have to incur if we kept both.
Correct. It's $275,000 plus
fees to relicense.
Well, plus other fees and that factor that we've been fairly consistent is a factor of 1.7. So it's 275 times 1.7 or 1.69. So I mean that comes up to about the $460,000 that I referenced, but which again, there's been a lot of, we know we have revenue and we know we have expenses. How we could shave some of the expenses, I don't know. But I mean, we were given some numbers last month that the net profit has been averaging about $65,000 a year for both of the dams. Now, we haven't gotten a breakdown of which one had, the percentage, which one is more profitable, but the Junction Falls produces about 70% of the energy and the Powell about 30%. So I just took that percentage and said that was the net revenue. So obviously the Powell is not producing as much revenue, and we're looking potentially at a reasonably large investment to repair that, to make that viable for another 40 years. As Chris said, that maybe the useful life is really only 5 years for that facility, and I think that's when our actual license runs out, so we could get the full value out of that dam.
I'd also like to, can I ask a question of you, Kevin? My understanding is the $8 million to remove both dams, there's some infrastructure that's not included in that. My understanding is that we'd have to do some work with how stormwater drains from downtown in addition to this. Is that correct?
Correct, and I think that was the 8 million is more of a bare bones number, and the Kinney Corridor Committee in the next, I guess, year and a half, as they run out their ideas for what that should be, there could be additional cost related to stormwater and other enhancements in the river. So that is basically dam removal without a lot of those additional expenses.
Okay.
So maybe minor ones in there, but not a grand plan.
And Kevin, just ask, so the $8 million, I mean, that's not building any parks, correct?
Correct.
So whatever that cost and wherever that money would come from is yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined.
And you could make an investment if that money does come to light, could make an investment to improve the impoundment.
There's that option.
Which is one of the, I think, one of the options that the corridor committees has identified also.
Correct.
Go ahead, Diane.
No, you can.
Oh, Kevin, you mentioned the stormwater. We don't, at this point, it would just be a guess as to what that plan would cost.
Mark, did we run a few numbers on stormwater and a potential cost of the stormwater relocation enhancements?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kevin. And we have started looking at some of those numbers. As I cautioned at the beginning, the numbers that we have even in the report at this point really aren't based on design. What I'll share is that in any of the three scenarios, you will be looking at the potential of similar stormwater improvements. So the cost for those won't create a differential between any of the three scenarios. That's partially why we didn't look at that. You may recall something called the Lake George Restoration Plan. It was something that the city explored back in the mid-2000s, around 2005. And so we started to take a look at those improvements and bringing those forward to 2017 or beyond. But again, those improvements would be similar regardless of the scenario that you would choose. So. I don't know how either this board or the council can make a reasonable decision for the community without some hard numbers. I mean, the numbers we got, admittedly, are bare bones. And you know that once the dams were removed, that's not the end of it. That's not even close. You might be spending $15 million by the time you're done with the project. And I don't know how that this board or the council can make a reasonable recommendation to the community with those
if I may.
Incomplete numbers.
I agree that we're working with preliminary numbers. However, I also believe that we are working with the best available information. Essentially what we're being asked to do here is make a policy decision as to what direction our city's going. And governing boards are asked to make those kinds of decisions all the time. What I see our role here as the Utility Advisory Board is to make a decision based on what we know as people who oversee the city utilities and are responsible not only to the city council and the citizens as a whole, but also to the ratepayers, to make sure that we make decisions where they get reliable energy at a reasonable cost. And we've got the best interests of them in mind. To move this along, I'm going to...
May I?
Oh, go ahead.
Are you going to make a motion?
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, good, but let me... good, but just a second.
Okay, then
I was prepared to do it as well, and it doesn't matter to me who makes the first one, but I'm really thankful to see 180 degrees of opinion in the room, and I don't want to go on record as saying I'm trying to please all people, but I've talked to both sides, to put it simply, and I spent a good amount of time recently looking to future trends in hydroelectric, not how I thought I'd spend an afternoon. And I'll tell you what, China's got tons of it, and they're growing rapidly. We're pretty well static in this country. There's one being built over here for everyone that disappears over here. There's not a lot of drama in hydroelectric in our country today. I've learned a whole lot of things that I'm the junior member of this board, and I've learned more than I thought I would about electric, biosolids, and other things. I've done my very best to put all of this together. And I went to Tech Talks, as did others here. I want to speak for this group as being a group that has taken the commitment to learn and learn well, because we're not experts either. At the Tech Talks, I accepted pretty quickly that we're working with imperfect or preliminary numbers, and I agree with the statement that we are working on a policy here. Having said that, would you mind if I made it? All right. I make a motion to the UAB that we send to the council the motion that we go with scenario 3, relicense the Junction Falls Hydro Facility and remove the Powell Falls Hydro Facility and Dam at some point in the future.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I believe strongly that we need a measured approach. I think we have good faith people doing a lot of good things toward what could be a wonderful future for the city that involves a free-flowing river, and that may be, but I think we have enough questions that to jump in with both feet would be risky. And that sums up what I've learned in the past 6 months. I know others have too, and those people have shared, and I appreciate that. But there you go.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on the motion in front of us? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same.
Aye.
Motion passes. And that was option 3, to relicense Junction Falls Hydro Facility and remove the Powell Falls Hydro Facility and dam at some point in the future. Any hydro or dam-related expenditures over $5,000 will be brought to the Utility Advisory Board and City Council for review and approval. Moving on to item number 4, which is the resolution and memo adopting recommendation to City Council for water wastewater SCADA system, and we have a presentation on that.
Is here tonight to give a presentation on the SCADA system.
Kevin, why don't you just hold for a couple minutes?
We'll just take 5 minutes, let some people shuffle around, and then Greg can come on up and get ready.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
With this one now, it says here that we're going to relicense the Junction Falls and then remove this one at some time in the future. Does that mean that we will not relicense this one?
Yes, we're recommending.
Right.
But that would,
We're recommending only relicense.
Are you okay with it? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Why did you say that? I could have. Right. Yeah, right. I do know it. Yeah, my own opinion.
That'd be a good way to go. I'm sure at this point.
Every time I have this discussion, and in my mind, one nice game and one nice day works out fine. That's not, but interesting enough, early on,
Yeah,
just never
I agree.
until the last couple of months was dollars. There was no data available, and I found that frustrating.
So, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Was he the TV guy?
Right. Well, your statement about the scope of this period.
You kidding? It was easy act to follow. Takes all the pressure off.
That's what my so spend a couple $100,000. Yeah.
I feel like higher.
Yeah.
You want your toilet to flush well.
Right, and I think it's going to be, I think it'll be priceless to you as a council member to have both the Kinney corridor. I hope they have some more information for you. I really do. So, or sure. Well, that's information of a sort too. Yeah. So.
Dennis told me a trick. If you get the PowerPoint off, you're never on the camera.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't like being on camera, so.
I could choke.
Maybe in a couple of minutes.
We'll come back in 1 minute. One more minute.
I think I got a frog in my throat.
Okay.
If they would put $1,000 in with their signature each to bring some real money.
Okay, we'll come back. Thank you for that break. We are now at item number 4, which is the resolution and memo adopting the recommendation to City Council for water, wastewater SCADA system. And we have a presentation.
Yes, we do. Thanks for having us. So I'm Greg Deach, the city's SCADA engineer, and Ron Groth is with me. He's the water and wastewater superintendent. We'll try to make this one a little quicker for you. So we're here to talk about the water and the wastewater SCADA. You probably remember me from the electric SCADA. So we're still talking about the computers and the hardware that runs the water towers this time and the wastewater treatment plant, things like that. And I just wanted to give you a little high-level overview of the kinds of things the SCADA can do. In the case of the water systems, it's monitoring things like the water levels and the reservoir or the water towers and the water temperature when it gets cold in the winter so it doesn't freeze. Monitors pumps, make sure that they're running, tracks how long they've run, things like that. And then on the operational side, it lets operators know when things are going wrong and helps them diagnose things more quickly and easily. And ultimately, all that data feeds into reports that we can use with the DNR and other reports that maybe you would like to see or things like that. So wastewater, it's very similar, just the opposite end. So it's handling the day-to-day operations of the wastewater facility, the operational control of that, and making sure that everything's running smoothly there. Controlling pump speeds, how fast are we pumping from one tank to another, levels in tanks, things like that. And then the sewage lift stations as well. And we have a video for you. It's in your packet. If you'd like to see it, we'll play it for you. If you'd like to skip it, about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, as you cue that up, I want to just mention the last 2 slides. You talked about troubleshooting and what SCADA can do. And this is very, very important for Ron and his people. when something goes bad, if a lift station stops working in the middle of the night and sewage is backing up in a lift station and maybe into homes, or water towers are overflowing, or pumps break, this SCADA system will send an alarm and alert to Ron and his people in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, at any time. Very vital to operating a good, efficient, safe system. Our current SCADA system really is lacking in some of that right now, but I just really wanted to highlight that information that would be shared through this new SCADA system with Ron and his people to really ensure a safe, reliable system.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, this video really highlights the troubleshooting aspects of a modern SCADA that's known as Wonderware, and that's the system that we'd like to see installed.
I'm responsible for a water treatment plant. Today, I'm managing all of my operations through the operator's workstation using InTouch. It's a great tool for operators, but it really doesn't give me the information I need to understand the operational problems I have. I've been challenged to reduce my cost, and that really translates to energy and maintenance. Today, I'm replacing pumps twice a year that I know are rated to last much longer. So I suspect this has something to do with their duty cycle. I'm too busy fighting fires to have time to develop something around InTouch. I really need something that's super simple, that just gives me the information I need. So I've decided to give Wonderware Online a try. It's really easy to get started. I download this free Historian publisher, and I can register my InTouch application with Wonderware Online. Really simple. Then I can go back to my office and go to the website and log in. If I don't really know the details of the application, I just have to have a general idea. In this case, I know I've got a manifold that has several pumps. So if I just type manifold, I automatically find the pumps that I'm interested in. And I can see here what the flow rates on these pumps has been. Now it's starting to look like I understand the problem. The flow rate's changing an awful lot. That suggests that it really is the duty cycle. So I can look at the actual pump status and see that more details here. There's my problem. This pump coming off and on every 30 seconds. Another one's coming on and off every minute. Here I can see details, how much the average runtime is for each pump. You can tell that one of them, the blue one, is on all the time. Now I know what to do. I'm going to go make some changes at the control system layer and see if I can improve this operation. Now I've fixed my problem, or at least I think I have. It's been a few hours since I finished those changes, so I come back to my desk and again pull up this information. Now you can see that the same pumps are not oscillating back and forth. Now they're running much more consistently. There's a lot more even distribution of the running state. I can also look at energy usage, and I'll find that that's also lower. Here you can see the starts and stops really increase my energy usage. Now that I've improved that control, it's much more efficient. This is also going to make my pumps last longer, but I don't want to have to be at my desk to check up on this. So I'm going to send this report to my mobile device. Give it a name. And share it. Now if I switch over to my phone, I can start Smart Glance. And here's a report I just created. I can select some tags and get a chart in a couple of different formats. Find exact values at a particular point in time. And set up an alert. So when the level gets above a particular limit, 60, I'll be notified. It's all that simple.
And we'd compare that with the current system that calls us and says something didn't work. It might tell us what that something was, but there's not anything more than that. But the next part of the presentation is Ron, so.
Yeah, I think you saw that video. That's kind of next generation SCADA. I remember when I started 30 years ago, our SCADA consisted of basically one phone line going to the police department, and the dispatch would call you, tell you have an alarm. You'd have to go down to see what was going on. Collection system, your lift stations were, you had a light and a horn on the outside of the building, and you told Mrs. Jones, please keep an eye on that. And if something happens, give us a call. It worked good until Mrs. Jones was gone for the weekend. So now this is, you know, obviously we don't live by that kind of system anymore. That kind of stuff doesn't fly. So this is next generation. Not only gives you your alarms, gives you all your operational parameters, but it also expands on it like we just saw. Gives you a whole palette of different operational ideas. So just some of the background, you know, the existing SCADA is approximately 20 years old. Some of it's older than that. Some of it dates back to the mid-90s. Like parts are obsolete. It's our water master, the main PLC, I've been told by 3 different companies that we can't get parts if something goes wrong with it. So that needs replacement in a big way. High communication failure. The radios we currently have, I think since I've been here the last 2 years, we've had 5 or 6 radios that have went down on us, which is a high failure rate. The radios we're looking at putting in, the Transnet radios, I actually had those radios in a different application where I was for 8 years. I never had one fail. Not saying they can't, but it's a lot better system. Failure to notify. Sometimes we have the alarms. They get to the plant. They don't get out. They didn't notify anybody. The guys don't know until they come down to the plant and see the alarms going off on the screen. Or something happens in the community, they get a call. So, and you can just see some of the deficiencies, just kind of rehashing some of the things we covered. And there's a number of other things. I mean, we found things like intrinsically safe systems in our wet wells and our lift stations, just basically isolating the high voltage from the water in the lift station. Used to be you could run 120 volts into a wet well, that was fine, but it isn't anymore, so updating some of those systems. And here's current CIP, our 3-year CIP, 2017, 18, 19. You can see combined water, wastewater, we have $400,000 over the next 3 years. So in 17, we have 100,000 water and wastewater. And as you'll see on the next slide here, our low quote we had, our low proposal was $173,940. That was to do the water and wastewater systems. So we're under our 2017 CIP with that quote. What do we get for that? We did have another quote of automatic systems. Both of these are good companies. I've worked with both of them before. You know, the price difference is maybe one thing it's kind of caught my eye. I saw that first number, that 300,000 number, and I thought, oh, geez, this is kind of getting a little higher than what I was estimating. So then I got the next number, and yeah, we're back in the ballpark again. You know, it could be a difference of one company's more hungry than another. Maybe somebody's got a lot of work. They throw a number at it. If they get it, great. If they don't, we have plenty of work. We're not worried. So, and then, well, what do we get for that? The Wonderware software. You kind of saw an outline of that. It's quite a bit more to it than what was in that video, but it's a good system. It's been around since the late 80s. Reliable communication, like I talked about, new radios, all new, pretty much all new hardware. All our PLCs would be new SCADA computers, all that type of thing. So add redundancy, water and wastewater to be redundant. I mean, it's so important because some of this stuff takes days to fix. And if we don't have something else we can rely on, our systems are going to be down quite a while. And then remote accessibility. So the guys can, right now they can't do it. They can't go home and bring it up on their home computer or handheld device and see what's going on in the system. I mean, that's just a great option to have. I've had that option before and it's nice. And then the reliability, something as important. Pretty much every day of water and wastewater operation, our SCADA's in use. Guys check it, you know, continually during the day for different things. It runs our system. It starts and stops our well pumps. starts our wet well pumps in our lift stations and our treatment plant. It's just, having reliability of systems that cannot fail. So thank you for your time tonight. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Ron, I have a question. There's that difference between the two companies.
Yep.
That's pretty large.
It's almost 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable with the lower bid doing what you expect it to do?
Yeah, like I said, I've worked with both these companies. I know what they're capable of. Actually, that lower bid, the estimator for that company came out, visited every site, took pictures, took a bunch of notes. He spent a lot of time. He spent a day here going over all our sites and kind of the back and forth, asking me questions. What do you need here? And I feel we have it hammered out pretty well. And I've seen their work before. I know they do good work. I know they can do the work. And if they put that number on it, that's, I trust that number.
I'll just drive that point home too. Ron mentioned it too, but a lot of this is about timing for these companies. I mean, they have resources and staff available right now, and they're ready to go. Maybe if we go for a bid in June, it might be the 324 just because they're busy and have stuff going on. So a lot of times you just get the timing right.
Yeah.
A lot of times it works the opposite direction. We're paying more than we have to, so, yeah.
Because actually, between talking to the two companies, the lower price Corton's was a lot more positive. I mean, they were kind of, they didn't have some hesitation. They had a plan. There was no backtracking or no wondering if they could get it done. Everything, it flowed kind of nicely, I guess, once we got going, so.
Is there an expected life of the software and the system as a whole?
The software we have now is 20 years old. It's been updated, so it's like this would be too. So we'd have our normal updates, and it's hard to say. Like Wonderware's been around, like I said, since the late 80s. So there's really no reason if you wanted to, you couldn't maintain that. It would just be a matter of getting your updates.
Any questions for Ron? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I will move approval of the resolution recommending purchase of water and wastewater SCADA system.
Second.
All those in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same. Resolution passes. Now we move on to the reports, finance report, the utility dashboards, and the monthly utility report. And Kevin's doing it?
Yeah, so there'll be no finance report tonight. I talked to Al Rolick, and there were still numbers coming in from last year, so they'll have a full finance report in February to summarize December and January. So he asked me to pass that along this evening, though there are a few dashboards in your packet tonight, which I don't have any specific highlights pulled out for you.
Okay. Right. Does anybody have any questions on any of those at all? Any of the items in there? Everybody's good? Okay. Moving on to announcements.
No big announcements other than our Wayne Cyberling's here tonight, and our power plant substation is nearing completion. We're working with Xcel Energy to make some final changeovers, and they're working on some phone lines with AT&T that they need to get completed. But once that's completed, we are potentially weeks away, barring everything goes well with Xcel Energy. So we are real close to completing that $4 million projects, and hats off to Wayne and his guys and the contractor of seeing that through. So getting real close.
Okay.
And I would just like to thank Brian for taking me through the hydro plant today and giving me a tour. Thank you.
Who's sitting next to you, Kevin?
I'm sorry. So I have a new assistant. This is Lene Nelson, our new administrative assistant, and she's here tonight between Rhonda. But I think Rhonda will probably be doing other role, and Lene will be taking this the seat of power, I guess, in the future. So, Lene, we're glad to have Lene aboard, and welcome, Lene. You'll see her around and hear from her on email.
Welcome.
Thank you, Adam.
Does anybody else have anything for a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.